What's up? So, goal setting for runners, achieving more with purpose. So, I want to share this episode about how to, run properly for your goals and, how to set these goals. When I was training for my first marathon, I initially set it up away for like 3 years before I actually committed to training for the marathon. I struggled to just make the plan and commit, even though I had this vague idea of I wanting to run a marathon. I kept procrastinating it. I kept letting other priorities get in the way. And, I was, eventually I committed to it, but it took a lot longer than it should have. So if you ever felt lost, with your goals, whether it's running or maybe it's trying to get out of an injury, you're trying to get healthy, you're trying to get fitter, you're not alone. Today we're going to tackle how to build a roadmap to bring those running dreams to life. And we're also going to tackle, how to get deeper. Maybe you're lacking motivation with your goals, trying to run faster. So we're going to discover, hey, what's your why? And also talk about a framework for setting goals. So why does goal setting matter for runners? Well, when you have goals, it keeps you motivated, right? You have a desire, something that you want to work towards, especially during challenges, right? Where maybe you're busy with work or some other life stressors. When you have these goals, it keeps you motivated. Like, hey, I'm working towards something that's important for you. Maybe it's you're trying to go for your first marathon, or maybe just trying to be more consistent with running, or maybe you're trying to recover from an injury, right? So while you have clearly defined goals, it helps prevent frustration, helps you keep track of your progress over time. Like, hey, are you actually getting better? Because sometimes we say these things, hey, I want to become faster, but we're not tracking our progress over time. Are we taking the steps to actually get faster? So training without goals is like trying to reach a destination without a map. Like if you don't have a roadmap of where you want to be, like, yeah, maybe you want to be a runner, but you're not doing the steps to become a runner. You're not, maybe you want to do a marathon, but you're not, signing up for races or doing long runs and things to prep you for marathon running. It's going to be you might be like me early on in my running journey where you could keep putting it off for years and years. Like, oh, I'll run a couple times this week and not really have a roadmap of where you want to go. So, what are some of the common mistakes that a lot of runners make? Mistake number one is not knowing their why. For example, you want to run a marathon, but why are you doing it? Is it to impress others? Are you doing it for someone else because you heard it was a good idea? Or are you doing it for your own, personal development, your self growth? Right. So not knowing why you're pursuing this thing in the first place. Sometimes you dig deep enough, you're like, I actually don't care about marathon running that much. Maybe I just really care just about running for fitness. That's fine too. And then just stop frustrating yourself by pursuing goals that you're not even passionate about. Mistake number two, setting vague or unrealistic goals. For example, you're a beginner, you're brand new to the sport of running, and you're thinking, hey, you're going to do the Olympic level performances within a few months of training. Stop kidding yourself. You're not going to be running a 2-hour marathon if you've been spending most of your adult life sitting in a couch working, sitting 80% of the day, going, and your job's like a desk job. You're not going to go just from complete couch to elite level marathon runner in just a few months. Right? You have to have, that's a common mistake, is that we sometimes you overestimate your abilities and you have these grandiose type of goals that you're trying to achieve in a few months. You have to be realistic. Mistake number three, ignoring the importance of breaking your goals into manageable steps. Example, trying to run 26.2 miles without first building an aerobic base or improving your leg strength, right? So this definitely is a common mistake I see a lot of beginner runners make, where they think they're going to just jump to marathon training. They're just going to wing it. And sure, you can potentially wing it, but that's also a recipe for injury. That's so where I see, I'm also a physical therapist, and I see like 80% of like first time marathon runners just end up getting hurt, end up going to doctors or a physical therapist for injuries that could have been prevented if they just would have took a stepwise progression, build up their general base fitness with running. So maybe they're not even used to walking. So start building up your walking base and then transition to, the aerobic running base, and then, follow a marathon training plan. So now let's talk about a framework that will help you when developing your goals for running. And you may have heard of this, you may have not. It's called the SMART goal setting framework. So it's smart. It's a smart way to set your goals. And what does it stand for? So S is specific. So you want to define exactly what you achieve. For example, you want to run a sub 25-minute 5K, or maybe you just want to finish your first marathon. You be very specific with what you want. So that's S. So then we go to the second letter of the acronym for M, measurable. Outlining the criteria for success, right? What does success look like for you? Oh, you achieved a 7 minute per mile pace in training by, the third month of training, right? Depending where you're at, of course, it has to be measurable, but also realistic. And we'll talk about that in the next, after we talk about the measurable thing. But you want to be able to measure it. We want to have something you can measure. Or you did 26.2 miles, right? Sometimes people talk about doing a marathon, but they're not really clear what that means. And I see a lot of confusion. We're like, oh, I did a 5K marathon. No, you ran a 5K. And that's impressive too, running a 5K. But the marathon is a clearly defined distance, right? So you outline the criteria for what a marathon is, right? So if you want to call a marathon a 5K, just know that's not what a marathon's classically defined as. A marathon is 26.2 miles. So if you did a 5K, that's fine. You did a 5K, just outline what success looks like for you. Or maybe it's a 10K, or maybe it's just consistency. Success is, oh, I did a 30-minute run 3 times this week. Whatever success is, looks like for you. Achievable. Set goals that are challenging but realistic. Focus on completing, for example, maybe you just want to complete your first marathon. Maybe you want to complete your first half marathon. Or maybe you want to win your age group category. Like you want to be the best in your age group. Maybe you're a 40-year-old runner. You just want to be the best 40-year-old runner for that specific race in your hometown. Or maybe you want to go for the Olympics, right? But it should be achievable, as in something you could actually achieve and realistic, right? Don't think you're going to be a 60-year-old runner and then beat some 23-year-old marathon elite runner when there's some biology does come into play. There's a reason like elite champion runners are in the 20s, 30s. You rarely see anyone beyond 40 like winning the absolute titles unless they're in like in a small hometown race and there's not big enough competitive pool. All right, so just make it realistic to what you want to achieve. Don't deceive yourself into thinking you're gonna be an Olympic level athlete and like gold medal when you're like in your 60s or something. Unless it's, again, you're just competing for your age group. It should also be relevant, right? Ensure your goals align with your personal values. So ask yourself why. Why does running a sub 3 hour marathon matter to you? How does that translate to the bigger picture or your bigger dream? All right, so it should be relevant to you, right? So sometimes we get these goals like, oh, I want to run a marathon, but you don't even really care about it just because maybe your partner is doing a marathon, but it's not relevant to you. You don't care. You care less about running the marathon. Maybe you just care about running to be healthy. That's fine too, right? Don't take someone else's goals. Have the goal should be, important for you and relevant for you. And sometimes we don't even really fully understand what we truly want. And you maybe just have to sit down and figure out, is this really relevant? Does it really matter to you? Should also have a time. Should be timely or time bound. So you should see a clear timeline when you want to achieve that goal. Maybe you just want to run your first half marathon within the next 6 months. Maybe you want to qualify for the Boston qualifier. Maybe you think that'll take you 2 years, right? It should be time bound, but also, again, realistic, relevant for you. It should be within your reach, going back to the relevant part, but you should also have a time frame when you want to achieve it. And it should be something that pushes you, it challenges you. It shouldn't be so easy that you could just go outside today and get it done, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, if you could easily already jog for 20 minutes, don't make that the goal if you could already achieve it. It should be something that kind of pushes you. And we're talking about big goals. It's something different than like a small goal, like a daily habit. That's not what I'm talking about. If it's just a daily habit that you just want to go out for a 20-minute jog, that's fine. But I'm talking about like a big goal that actually motivates you to, stretch yourself beyond your current ability levels, right? So like Boston qualifier time, or, maybe you start running 5 days a week versus 3 days a week. Something that just kind of pushes you beyond your comfort zone so you grow. And then there's also something to be said about goal setting while you're dealing with injury recovery, right? So there's a lot of challenges that injured runners face when they're setting goals, such as aiming too high too soon, right? So if you just had like knee surgery, like ACL surgery, don't think you're going to be running, your first month after knee surgery, like especially an ACL surgery, right? You're going to have to recover. And sometimes that ACL recovery surgery may take a long time. It may take 4, 5, even 6 months before you're actually fully running again comfortably. It may take a full year before you're going back to like high level, elite level competition or sport. So you have to be realistic and then know how to set goals, especially when you're dealing with like a major injury. If you don't know how to do that, talk to your physical therapist, your doctor, like, hey, what's a realistic timeline for you to recover after an injury? Sometimes people are just lost because they're not communicating with their healthcare team, right? For example, maybe you coming off an injury like knee surgery, you can start with a short-term goal. Can you walk for 30 minutes comfortably? Okay, you did that. Can you walk for an hour? Can you do that comfortably? Maybe can you start cycling or biking? Can you start swimming? To build strength while minimizing the strain or the impact on your leg until you're ready, your body has healed enough to start adding running back in, because running is a high impact sport. So you also want to be smart about it, especially if you're coming back from an injury or you're dealing with like a major health condition. So you want to adjust the goals. And if you need help, work with a coach, work with a mentor, work with a physical therapist, and ensure a mutual agreement on what's achievable, right? So don't think you're gonna, be achieving these big goals and be setting yourself up for disappointment because your expectations are just not in line with a realistic timeline for recovery after an injury. I also want to build momentum through feedback and consistency, right? So consistently working towards a goal, no matter the steps you break down the goal, because you're going to break down the goal into smaller steps. That's going to lead to the long-term success, right? It's not one thing to say, hey, you want to run a marathon, but if you're not taking the steps to train your body to handle the marathon, there's a chances are you're not going to be adequately prepared when marathon day comes upon, or you might get injured because you just didn't take the steps to prepare your body. So you start being consistent with working towards a goal, and that's going to go a long way. And that's the same thing that elite athletes do. They're consistent with the small habits of the process. They fall in love with the process. So you want to have a system for your goals, right? Creating a weekly running schedule, for example, like, hey, you have your month planned out. You already know what your workouts look Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. That's going to help you stay on track, avoid burnout, and make sure you're well-rounded here. Further, you want to, stay on track, avoid burnout, right? Having this weekly plan. You may even have a daily plan, right? So you may have like a daily plan. Hey, make sure you're getting enough sleep, you're eating right, you're feeling right. Especially if you're training for a marathon, you want to make sure you're feeling right. So you start breaking down your goal of running the marathon into all the components of what it takes to run the marathon. Yes, you have to run, obviously, but you also have to do things so you recover. You also have to do things so your body's strong enough to handle, that impact of running. Hey, are you doing your strength training? Are you making sure that's getting done? So you start breaking down what does it all take, or maybe you just need the gear. Maybe you just need like some different hydration or gels, or maybe you need to replace your running shoes, or maybe you don't even have running shoes to begin with. So if you're a complete newbie, right, you start breaking that down to like all the essential steps, like what do you need to be a runner? And then as you start, getting your gear, your shoes, your clothes, etc., you look at the weather, right? See how the weather's going to impact it. Maybe you need some gear for like winter running, so you're warmed in the winter, you're able to run outside, or maybe you need to find a gym in your hometown that has a treadmill that you could use a treadmill so you could train during the winter months. So you start having a system in place so you could also address any contingencies, right? So like the weather, the nutrition. Maybe if it's late at night and you're not comfortable running at night, you have access to a gym, or you have like a running buddy or a group, right? So you start having a whole system in place so it ensures that you meet your goal of, let's say, running the marathon or just being consistent with running. And you're also healthy because what's the point of like forcing yourself to show up to a marathon and then your body's broken up, you're injured, you're like crawling to get to the finish line. You don't want to be suffering yourself. You don't want to kill yourself just to come. You want to show up healthy and give it your best shot. You also don't want to end up injured, like be overzealous and then skip recovery, and now you're going at the doctor's office and having to like skip out on running season for like a whole year because you've caused like a stress fracture or something, right? And then that's where we talk about how a survivorship bias, right? Where achieving goals isn't just about the ambition, like just saying you want to do this big goal, but also about resilience. Because there's a difference between people who actually succeed and achieve their goals versus, because everyone, like, let's say you take two people who want to run the marathon. They both say they want to run it, but one of them doesn't show up to the finish line while the other one actually achieves their goal. So not just about having the goal, but it's also about the resilience, the consistency, learning from the mistakes, having a whole system in place to ensure to increase the likelihood that they actually, cross the finish line, right? Maintaining that momentum. While the other person who may just say, hey, I want to run the marathon, but doesn't like learn from the mistakes, ignores recovery. Maybe they start getting sick. Maybe they start getting injured. They start getting demotivated because they don't have a system in place to keep building up on that momentum, right? They're not reviewing their goals and things. And while the other person who was successful in meeting their goals, they were smart, they were intelligent about it, they did all the other parts to ensure success, right? So achieving goals is not just about saying these things, but also taking up all the little habits that add up to these processes, a system, a whole system, so that you could actually achieve your goal. And that's, when you work with a good, if you're a complete beginner, it might be overwhelming. Like, what is it y'all talking about? And that's what, working with a coach is very beneficial for it. Something I've done for myself. I've worked with coaches as well, or mentorship when I needed help to achieve these big, lofty goals. Because it's one thing to learn about it, but then to actually, stay accountable, to stick with it, especially when you're like working a full-time job, it's good to, have a support team in place. So, what are some things you could do? So, tips of goal setting exercises that you can do, right? So, one, just sit down, get rid of distractions, write down all your running related goals, or maybe it's just health and fitness goals, no matter how vague they are. Get pen and paper or get your computer, but remove the distractions, get rid of those other tabs, just get a blank, word processing document, maybe a Google Doc or a Word document, and just start typing away. Maybe set a timer for 30 minutes. Just write down whatever all the goals are. Maybe they're have nothing to do with running. Maybe they're for lifting, whatever it is. And then maybe you share these goals with a friend or a coach or a therapist or whoever. Get feedback on these goals. Like, hey, are these goals realistic or relevant? And then ask yourself why, right? Dig deeper into your motivation. Like, hey, maybe you want to run the marathon. Ask yourself, why do you want to run the marathon? Why is the marathon? And then maybe you answer, oh, I want to run the marathon because I want to push yourself. And you're like, okay, why do you want to push yourself, right? You keep going layers deeper and deeper. You start peeling the onion back to get deeper into your deeper why you want to, do this marathon. Why do you want to run in the first place? Why bother, right? So you keep asking yourself why to get really deep. And when you see, does this, and you ask yourself, like, does this running still align with your deeper motivation and goal? Maybe you find that it does. And maybe you find that it doesn't, and that's okay too. Maybe it's just something as an afterthought you just do as part of your general fitness. Maybe you love strength training more. That's fine too. Or maybe you decide that running's not even for you. Maybe you just want to go bike or swim, right? So you kind of have to sit down and sit with your thoughts, reflect. Why do you want to run, and why do you want to do the Boston Qualifier Marathon? Why do you want to, etc.? You get the point. And then do the SMART goal framework, right? You can look up the SMART goal setting framework. So once you have like an idea of what the goal is, right, write it down specific, write down in pen and paper. Look at that goal every day. So set it like a reminder, like every day, look at the goal. So keep reminding yourself, just keep yourself motivated while you set that goal in the first place, right? Going back to the SMART framework. It's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. For example, I want to run the Boston Marathon in under 3 hours in 2 years from now. Right, so it's achievable. I have a timeline. It's relevant for me. And this example, sorry, right? This is just an example, folks. Don't hit me up 2 years from now. Hey, Ray, you said you wanted to run the Boston Marathon. Why didn't you do it in 2 years from now? This is just an example, folks. Just an example. All right, so that was the goal setting exercise, right? Write down your goals, review it daily. If you need to refine it, maybe you change your mind, right? And that's okay. Sometimes you change your mind. I tell people, some people are probably familiar with goal setting for like the New Year's, right? They have like a New Year's resolution. But I recommend every quarter, which is like every 3 months, going back, reviewing the goals. And if that's overwhelming for you, so at least twice a year. So every 6 months, look at your goals. Okay, is this getting you closer to where you want to be? Is it still aligned with who you want to be, with your values? Like maybe decide that you want to do something else. You don't want to be a marathon runner. Maybe you just care about 5Ks, or maybe you just care about a social run with friends, right? So those are like the key takeaways. Have some goals. Make sure they're aligned with your values and priorities, right? Because sometimes you sit back like, man, whose goals are these? Am I just being influenced by society or my friend who wants to do this? Do I really care about running this marathon? Am I being pushed or pressured to do something I don't want to do? So whether you're chasing a marathon finish line or just aiming for your personal best, your running goals are achievable step by step. And remember, every great run starts with a single stride towards something bigger. Right. So if you want to learn more about, training for running, maybe you want to achieve a goal that it's been out of grasp. Maybe you want to run faster. You want to run your first race. Maybe you just want to run to pass a fitness exam. Maybe you're trying to get into the military. You need help. Join my free course for runners. I have a free school group called Running Pain Free. I'll have the link in the show notes and in the comments.